In this video, I'm going to teach you everything about YouTube advertising targeting in 2022 so you can really be profitable with your YouTube ads. Now, keep in mind this video is from my YouTube ads coaching and training program. You can find out more about it in the link below. And also, I'm giving away a 1-hour coaching session with one of our top media buyers if you comment below with the biggest lesson you learned from this video, so make sure to do that. Now let's get right into this video, but before we do, make sure to move your hand to that like button and hit that. So let's get into it. All right, guys, let's get into the targeting. So with YouTube ads targeting, especially in 2022, there's just so much variety and all these options really give you a lot of power when it comes to targeting and being able to get customers. So because of the fact that targeting is so in-depth with YouTube, this video is going to be a long one. But let's get right into it. After this video, you'll be better prepared than 90% of media buyers to really run YouTube ads well. So the first form of targeting you want to understand is geography, demographics, and devices. So with YouTube ads, you can target by gender, by age, by parental status, even household income for demographics, right? And this allows you to really tune in your targeting. Now, another great part about YouTube is you can also be very specific with your geographical targeting. You can target by country, you can target by city, you can target by region, and you can even target by GPS coordinates and radiuses. And then you can also target by devices and so on. So let's just show you what this looks like when you're setting up a campaign, right? So we're setting up a campaign right here. So let's talk about locations first. So as you can see here, I can target different countries. Obviously, I'm targeting Western-speaking countries. However, you can get much more specific than that, right? So you can target around a specific coordinates, right? So this could literally be a GPS coordinate. Now, you can also do zip codes. So let's say Washington, DC, that's a zip code, and you can target people in that specific zip code. You can do states. So let's say you want to target Arizona. You can do that. You can do countries, so you could even target very, very specific countries. And you can do cities, obviously. And then you can add locations in bulk, right? So if you have a bunch of zip codes you need to target, you can also do that. So the targeting options are really, really powerful. You can also exclude places. So let's say if I want to exclude Hawaii, then I can exclude that, and then that will show up in the exclusions, right? So really, with the location side, you can pretty much any kind of combination you want to and get very specific or very broad. Now, my suggestion is starting out with the US, but then also testing other English-speaking countries. For example, Australia, Canada, United Kingdom, New Zealand, and then also countries like South Africa, Sweden, Norway, Scandinavian countries, Singapore, etc. can all work. Now, another great option is languages. So you can actually target the languages people speak. So this is really good. For example, if you're even in the US, there's a lot of Spanish speakers. So if you target on English, you'll just get English speakers. For example, if you're selling a Spanish offer in the United States, you can just target by Spanish and you will get a ton of traffic as well, right? So there's a lot you can do with the languages. One example of this is if you're targeting, let's say, expats. So let's say we want to target American expats in places like Latin America, right? So you can go for Brazil, you can go for, let's say, Colombia, and then you'll put in English, right? And then you'll be much more likely to get expats because of the fact that, most people in those countries don't speak English. So that's really interesting. And then from there, as we get into demographics, as you can see, there's gender, so female, male. Unknown is a pretty big portion of YouTube. So usually I do keep unknown checked on. So if I want to do a supplement offer for men, I usually do male and unknown, and I'll kind of see how the performance is on unknown, right? And if it's really bad, I'll take it off, but usually it works quite well. Now, age as well. Typically, I always leave 18 to 24 unchecked for anything that's more expensive, as 18 to 24-year-olds don't have much money usually. Parental status. So again, this is useful if you're selling, baby products. Obviously, you want to uncheck not a parent. Household income is another one, where if we're selling high ticket offers, we'll often exclude the lower 50%, as well as sometimes we'll even go and exclude 31 to 40, 41 to 50, and then unknown. And then you only have the top 30%. Keep in mind, this limits your targeting. It will increase costs quite a bit. So this is something you want to test, but with a high ticket offer, this is the default, right? Just exclude lower 50%. That will help a lot. So yeah, guys, that is demographic and geographic targeting. Now, you can also target by devices. So you go in here and you can basically decide which devices. I usually exclude TV screens because TV screens, for example, when an ad shows up on a TV screen, there's really not an option to click through. It's good for branding, it's good for retargeting, it's not really good for cold traffic, so I will exclude TV screens usually. And that's how I set that up. Now let's talk about retargeting, right? So retargeting is a really great starting point if you have a lot of website traffic or if you have a YouTube channel, right? So for example, if you have over 100,000 visitors a month on your website, or if you have a YouTube channel with 50,000 subscribers, those are great places to start advertising. So with these retargeting campaigns, you do want to use maximize conversions typically, as unless you have a massive retargeting audience, it's going to have delivery problems with target CPA. So yeah, if you do have, let's say, 100,000 subscribers and you're getting millions of views and so on, then yeah, you can do target CPA. But in many cases, if you have 10,000, 20,000 website visitors a month, you'll want to test both, but usually maximize conversions is where I would start out, as that usually will lead to delivery and lead to more people getting served impressions. Now, the way you set up retargeting is you go to here to people who you want to reach, you go to audience segments, and you go to your data right over here. So you can go in here, you can browse your retargeting audiences, right? So I have a few here. So, agency landing page in the last 30 days, there's YouTube viewers, there's website visitors. So there's even similar audiences. So what I'll do is often go for all visitors, and that's usually a good one. And this is the last 30 days, right? So you can essentially create your audiences. Now, obviously, if you have a channel with more views, you can create audiences based on different timeframes. For me, for example, 15 days has a decent amount of traffic, 90 days has more traffic. But if I do like a 2-day audience, it's going to be really, really small, and I'm not going to be able to get that much traffic out of it. So the way you create these retargeting audiences is you go into tools and settings, you go to audience manager. So you go here into audience manager, and what you'll do is you'll click on your data segments, right? And then you'll essentially be able to create these lists, right? So there's website visitors, there's YouTube users, and there's customer list. Customer list is your email list, right? However, you do need typically $50,000 in ad spend before you can use this, and an account in good standing. Usually, if you don't have that $50,000 spent, you're not going to see this option. Now, if we click on website visitors, right, then we are able to essentially create audiences based on different websites. So for example, if the page URL contains, let's say there's a specific landing page you want to target, right? And the landing page URL is linxdigitalagency.com/YouTube, right? So then you can create audiences based off that. Or you can just go in here and you can also do people who did not visit a page, people who visited a page, people who visited during specific dates if you want to do a retargeting for a promotion, people who visited pages with specific tags. There's a lot of things you can do here, right? But the simple one is, let's say, website visitors, right? So anybody who visited your website, and then you can go and mess around with the different time periods, right? So if you put in 30 days, this is everybody who's been there in the last 30 days. If you put 15 days, it's everybody who's been there, who's been to your website in the last 15 days, and so on. So you can kind of figure that out, and you can go up to 540. And if you go up onto like 540 or 360 or any of these bigger numbers, then you do want to use target CPA. For shorter time frames, you'll probably have a lot of issues with getting it to serve impressions if you use target CPA. In that case, if you're doing a shorter time frame, use maximize conversion. Now, if we go back, I'll show you how to set up your YouTube audiences as well. So you click on YouTube users, and you can essentially, if you'll have to link your channel, but if you go on here, you can make audiences from a lot of different options, right? So viewed any video from a channel, and some good common best practices are, if you want to do video viewers, 2-day viewers, 5-day viewers, and so on are pretty good audiences because they're very recent. If you do subscribers, you can go longer, right? So basically, people who've subscribed are obviously higher quality than somebody who's just watched one video. So typically what I like to do is test different time frames. So you can do 2-day viewers, 5-day viewers, 10-day viewers, etc. And you can test them. And then you can also use exclusions to narrow down audiences. So you could include 5-day viewers and exclude 2-day viewers, right? So an example of this is, let's say I create an audience for 60 days, right? And so let's go into a campaign. So if you go into audiences and campaign, you go to edit audience settings, right? You will select the ad group here. When you're in here, what you're gonna do is you're gonna go to how have they interacted with your business. So this is all your retargeting audiences. Let's say if I want to target people who viewed a video between 60 and 15 days ago, right? So let's say in one campaign, you're targeting people who've been on the channel in the last 15 days. And then in another campaign, you want to target people from 15 to 60. So kind of doing like these different segments, right? So if you want to be able to target people from 15 to 60, what you do is you add in 60-day YouTube viewers. And then what you do is you go here to edit exclusions. And then you go back here to edit exclusions and you go to YouTube users and you click 15 days. And now you've excluded these people. So now you're only targeting people who've seen a YouTube video between 15 and 60 days ago. And so that's what I mean is you can basically test different timeframes, right? Like you could test people who watched the video last 2 days, you can test people who watched the video from 2 to 7 days and so on. And you can kind of get a feel for what's working and not working. Now, my recommendation is to start with something like 2 days, expand out as needed, and test them against each other. And eventually you'll find something that, is profitable. Now, one thing to keep in mind with YouTube, most of these audiences, they require a minimum audience size of 1,000 people. It's not like Facebook where they're super granular. So that's something to keep in mind. I do want to cover a little bit more about the YouTube audiences. So for example, if you have a YouTube channel with a bunch of different themes, right? Let's say you cover how to run an agency, and then you also have some videos on, let's say, advertising, right? So you can kind of choose individual videos. You can even do viewed any video as an ad. So if you want to specifically target people who watch your ads, you can do viewed certain videos as ads. So if you want to retarget a specific ad that you ran, so this could be good if, let's say, you're doing a video discovery campaign for a video where you've kind of driven a lot of traffic to a certain video. It could definitely be a good way to retarget those people. And then you can also target people who subscribed to your channel, visited your channel page, or liked a video from a channel, or added any video from a channel to a playlist, or even shared any video from a channel, right? So you have a bunch of options. Typically, I stick to viewed any video from a channel, subscribed to a channel, visited a channel page, and then once in a while, I'll do these ones right here. But in my honest opinion, I do think broader is somewhat better. So when you get too granular with YouTube ads, it can be counterproductive. So with retargeting in general, what I would do is just test a bunch of audiences, and what works, works. Don't try to overanalyze it. If you try to create this perfect retargeting audience of people who were on the website 5 to 7 days ago, it can be a little bit overkill, right? Usually the algorithm does better with a bit more space, right? So definitely test, but don't go too deep into it. Don't go to the point where you're just overanalyzing and spending too much energy on this. Just set up a bunch of retargeting audiences, kill the ones that don't work, and don't try to overanalyze it. So let's quickly talk about retargeting your email list and customer lists, right? So you do need to have the $50,000 in spend in your Google Ads account. You typically need an account manager as well. And basically this is a powerful form of targeting because you can essentially target your email list or your customer list. You can target those people as well based on your website if you've set up your website retargeting audiences, but with the email list, it's usually a little bit more accurate and you have a bit more control because you can export different lists, right? So you can export lists of your highest value customers. You can export lists of people who are leads. So this does give you some extra firepower with your retargeting. I do recommend maximize conversions for this. And like I mentioned, this is right here. When you're setting up this audience type, you go to your data segments, you go to customer list, and then you're able to upload this file. So you can upload plain text data, you can upload it as a hash data as well. And you can basically just upload a CSV file with these pieces of information, right? So that's kind of how you set that up. Now, the recommended bidding type is the max conversions. As again, this is typically going to be something where you're probably not going to have a lot of spend unless you have a massive email list of hundreds of thousands of people. So if you have, let's say 30,000 people, probably maximize conversions is going to work better for you. All right, so let's talk about placement targeting. So placement targeting is where you can target individual videos and channels. We often use a tool called TubeSift, and the way TubeSift works, so I'll have a link in the description for you guys to purchase TubeSift. So the way TubeSift works is you go into TubeSift, you log in, and you can search for videos by keyword, by relation to video, or by channel, right? So this is for finding all the videos from one channel. So I don't know which channel that is, but if you search that, okay, so it's a random chill stuff channel. And essentially it's going to pull up all the videos from that channel that are monetized, right? So if you're trying to use TubeSift, my recommendations are you really want to build a bigger list of videos. I like 300, so that will give you more. So if you click in, let's say you're selling a ketogenic product, right? So keto supplements. Let's say you're selling a keto supplement, you'll do 300 and you'll do that. And you'll want to use different keywords, right? The more placements you have, the better. It's usually, in my opinion, with placements, smaller placement lists don't work. You want to really go for bigger placement lists where you can. So once you have the list of placements, right? This is going to take a while. So you can do two things. You can save the list. So it shows up in your TubeSift so you can use it in the future, which I recommend you do. And you'll name it, you add it. And that's pretty quick. And the second thing is get the links right here. So you'll grab all the video links, you'll cut it. And the way you set up placements is you'll go into your campaign. Now, obviously, this is going to look a bit different if you're setting up a campaign from scratch, but essentially you're going to go to content. So when you're setting up a campaign from scratch, it'll be in the content section. You're going to go to placements. And then you're going to enter, because this allows you to enter in multiple placements. And then you're going to click save. So that's how you do it. And as I said, usually I do like bigger placement lists. So 300 plus, right? Maybe even going up to 1,000. So you could run TubeSift for a few closely related keywords, throw them all in the placement list, and then use that. And yeah, bigger placement lists typically work better. Now, one thing you do want to keep in mind is when you use individual channel URLs. So let's say you're on YouTube. Grab that URL, throw that in there. And there you go. Now you're getting the videos from that channel. So that's a better way of doing it. That's a secondary way to target a specific channel because then you can get the individual video URLs versus the channel URL, which sometimes doesn't deliver for whatever reason. Now, guys, YouTube is moving towards monetizing all videos. However, as of this moment, you can still choose monetization settings as of right now. And this may change very soon. So sometimes videos that are not monetized, if you put them in, you're not going to get any delivery because they're not ads showing up in front of them. However, that's going to change soon with YouTube basically monetizing pretty much every video out there. So with TubeSift, they do check that automatically. It's a time-saving tool. I highly recommend you sign up. So there'll be a link in the description for TubeSift. And then the last thing about placements is we don't use this heavily in 2022. It is very expensive. It's worth testing and there's high quality traffic. In our experience, broader audiences are usually a lot better. Now guys, let's talk about keyword target. So keyword targeting is based on the video title and metadata. So what I mean by this, right, is if you go onto a video, so with keyword campaigns, it's gonna look at the title. It's gonna look at the description. It's gonna also look at the tags, right? So the video tags are gonna be important. So these are all factors which basically helps YouTube figure out if a video is relevant for that keyword. Now, one thing you want to understand with keywords is it's quite a scalable audience and it's a high intent audience. It's a pretty good audience type, right? We've scaled individual campaigns to thousands of dollars a day just by targeting keywords. And it's possible to spend a lot of money on keywords, right? So I do recommend that you check out my keyword research video. I'll have a link below to that. So that's a separate video where I go over how to research keywords. But essentially in 2022, what we found is keywords perform well, but not as well as keyword-based custom intent audiences, right? So those are different types of audiences that we'll cover in a little bit. But yeah, keywords are definitely worth it. Now, to give you an idea of how to set up keywords, what you do is you go in here to display and video keywords, you click in keywords, right? and you'll be able to put in your keywords. So typically the structure we recommend with keywords is 3 to 5 keywords per campaign, and usually you'll find like a 1 or 2 of them will spend a lot and the other 2 may spend less, which is okay. So essentially you're going to put in a very tight group of keywords into here, right? So what I mean by that is they need to be very thematically close to each other, right? So let's say you're selling a keto supplement. So one way you could do it is you brainstorm, let's say, a bunch of big keto keywords, right? So go into here and you put in keto, and you can see these are all big kind of keto keywords. So you want to look at the ones that, by the way, this is a tool, I believe it's Keywords Anywhere. I'll go over some tools you can use. But for example, keto diet for beginners, right? So that is a good seed keyword, right? And you'll want to have multiple campaigns with different seed keywords. So what I'll do here is keto diet for beginners is our kind of our big keyword. So we'll go for keto diet for beginners, and then you have a bunch more here. So you can take, let's say, a few of these, and you'll put in maybe keto diets for beginners, Dr. Berg, keto diets for beginners, weight loss, etc. Keto diet for beginners, Dr. Eric. Maybe the kind of like a couple more recipes for sure is a good one. Meal plan is a good one. So if you throw those in there, you'll have 4 or 5 keywords. They're all kind of related and they're very relevant and very tightly grouped. So it gives you basically that opportunity to test those keywords with that keyword campaign. And then for each different keyword campaign, you're gonna have one of these seed keywords, right? So campaign 1 is keto diet for beginners. And then from that keto diet for beginners, you have 4 to 5 different sub keywords, right? That you put right into here in that ad group. So it's 1 campaign, 1 ad group, 4 to 5 keywords. So the next one would be keto diet, let's say recipes, right? And then you go and you basically put that into a separate campaign and find 4 or 5 really relevant keywords around that. So that's what I like to do. I like to group my keywords really tightly, because then when I'm testing these campaigns, I have a good idea of why individual campaigns are working, right? Because they have specific keyword themes that they're targeting and specific videos that they're targeting, versus let's say you have one campaign with a million different keywords, because what's going to happen if you have like, let's say 100 keywords in one campaign is one keyword is going to spend all the money, the rest are not going to spend anything, and you're not going to have an accurate idea of what sub niche of your big niche is working the best with your ad. So that's something to keep in mind. Obviously, you can still do these big broad keywords. So as you start scaling, you might find that, for example, keto diet as a keyword and some of these big ones actually end up working. But I do recommend that you have a few different campaigns with these different sub keywords, right? Because they all have a lot of volume in this case. And then from there, you can obviously test the bigger keywords as well. Now, one caveat and exception to this rule is if you're in a very small niche with a lot less search volume, then you want to go for the biggest, broadest keywords you can, right? So keto diet's a huge niche. That's why I kind of recommend trying some of these sub keywords. Now, what tools do we use for keyword research, right? So TubeSift, again, is a great one, because we can go in here and we can click for keyword ideas. You throw in a keyword like keto and you'll get a bunch of really good keyword ideas right here, right? So this is an amazing source. And if you're already using TubeSift replacements, it makes sense. The Google Keyword Planner is another. So that's basically the way you go to that is you go to Tools and Settings and you go to Keyword Planner, discover new keywords. So let's say keto diet. And these are all based on google.com, all the search volume, but this is a great tool for keyword research. Now, another great tool is basically going onto YouTube and searching like this, right? This tool that I'm using, it's called Keywords Anywhere, right? So Keywords Anywhere, there's a free version. I have the paid version. This is a keyword tool that basically just allows you to find keywords pretty much anywhere. It's pretty amazing for that. And I pay for it, but it's totally worth it. Now let's talk about custom intent audiences, right? So this is a subset of custom audiences, and it's based on the keywords that people are searching for in Google. So if somebody goes onto google.com and, keeping on with the keto example, they search keto diet for beginners, we can target that person on YouTube. So it's a cross-network kind of system where people will search for stuff on Google and then you can target them on YouTube. Now the power of this is, if you look at Google PPC, right? If you're running search ads on Google for those keywords, your cost per clicks are going to be insanely high, while on YouTube, it's going to be much cheaper. So this is kind of a little hack and one of our favorite audience types. So the way you set it up is you essentially, to create an audience, you'll go here to Audience Manager and you'll go to Custom Segments. Again, everything's called segments now, but it's audiences basically. You click this and let's call it Custom Intent Keto Diet, right? So you're gonna wanna click on this, right? So what you're gonna do then is use the same tools I mentioned right here, right? Like TubeSift, Keyword Planner, even using YouTube, and also Keywords Anywhere. And what you'll want to do is test anywhere from, if they're really big keywords with a lot of volume, let's say hundreds of thousands of searches, you can just test 5 to 10. If you're in a smaller niche, you can go the more long tail route and then create a list of hundreds of keywords per custom intent audience. So we've tested both smaller keyword lists and larger keyword lists. And with the smaller keyword lists, it's typically better when there's more volume. Larger keyword lists are better when it's essentially less volume, but it's, you basically want to get as many keywords in there as possible to be able to target more people. With these audiences, they can do extremely well. Sometimes they can bomb pretty bad, but honestly, the upside can be huge if you can get these custom intent audiences working. So the way you set up these custom intent audiences, as I mentioned, is you'll add all your keywords here, separated by commas. And then what you'll do is let's go back into our campaign level. You're going to go to audiences and you're going to edit audience segments. And then you're going to go to browse custom audience segments. And then, that's where all your custom intent keywords will show up. So this is a very, very powerful audience targeting type. Now let's talk about similar audiences, right? So similar audiences are basically Google's version of lookalike audiences, right? Unfortunately, they're nowhere near as good as Facebook's lookalike. We're seeing some success with some clients for this, but really it's a pretty rare occurrence where an account has similar audiences work well. So it's a mixed bag. Sometimes it works well, sometimes it doesn't. So it's based on your existing remarketing list and automatically generated. It's still worth testing, but it's not the best. The way this works is if you click on your data in similar segments, you'll get similar segments right here. And Google automatically makes these, right? Even if you go to YouTube audiences, you'll get these automatically created audiences. So with these audience type, you don't actually make them, right? So the way they work is when you create a remarketing or, basically an audience based on your own data, Google will create these automatically. And sometimes they get created, sometimes they don't, sometimes they take a while. But once it's created, you can kind of see it in here and then target those people. But there's no way for you to create them. You just create audiences and then Google makes similar audiences. Quick little tip, if you're trying to search for them, is just look for similar. So as you can see here, there's a bunch of random stuff here, but then you go here into how they have interacted with your business, and you can see all the similar audiences right there. So the next audience type we're going to talk about is custom affinity audiences. So these are audiences that are based on data you feed Google, right? So these can include URLs, it could include keyword phrases, apps, etc. Now, typically what we do is we'll do one URL per audience or one keyword per audience or one app per audience, right? And usually we find that works well. And this has been working quite well for us in 2022. It's been working well for us the last few years. And it's really great for both smaller niches as well as B2B niches, where industry associations and vendors have websites, but there's not much going on YouTube itself, right? So if you look at some technical industries and associations, there might be a couple YouTube channels that have very small number of views, but they are big industry associations that everybody knows. And if you create audiences based on those websites, that's how you can target those people. I do want to show you guys how to set this up. So what you do when you're creating these kind of audiences is, number one, use them inside Google Ads. Is you go to obviously your audiences and your targeting, you go to edit audience segments, and then you go to browse and you go to custom audience segments. So just like custom intent, it's in the same place. And then you can actually create your custom segment from here. So your custom affinity audience, you can throw it in here. So we'll label it at CFF. And going on with the keto example, we'll go with who is the biggest keto diet. So let's take one of these websites that's all about keto. Thing is, it's going to go off the domain URL. It's not going to go off the specific page, right? So if you did WebMD, if you did this page right here, it's going to create an audience based on webmd.com. So that's going to be too broad, right? So what we want to do is we want to find a website that's just about ketogenic diet, right? So ketogenic.com. So this website's all about keto. So this would be a good website to make an audience off of, right? And what you're gonna do here is you're gonna go to people who browse these types of websites, and that's it. And then you click save. And then you put in, obviously, the ketogenic.com. Now you can also do people who use types of apps. So you can create audiences based on apps. So this is actually really cool. So if you look for keto apps, you can actually make audiences based on keto apps. So that's something that you guys should definitely try out. And what I'll do is I'll do it off one URL or of one app, right? Or if you're gonna go off interest or purchase intentions, go with keto diet. But typically I find the websites or apps work better. So one tip I have if you're trying to create these custom affinity audiences is you can find YouTube influencers, right? So for example, Dr. Eric Berg, right? So go and find his website and plug that in. That's a great way to find audience ideas. Another one is similarweb.com. So if you go to similarweb.com, right? So we have this ketogenic.com. So what we're gonna do is we can plug in ketogenic.com here. So if you scroll down here, it's gonna give you a bunch of websites that are similar, right? So this is a great way to find websites. Other great ways to find websites is to basically go onto these blogs, right? So usually these will have blogs and see what websites they link out to. So those are great ways to do it. All right, so let's talk about in-market audiences. These are audiences that are based on what Google thinks certain people are researching or planning to purchase, right? So essentially they are in market for a product or service. And we've had some really great results with these, especially with e-commerce clients. So with these in-market audiences, the way you set them up, so you're gonna go to audiences, right, in your campaign level. You're going to edit audience segments. You're going to select an ad group. You're going to browse, and you're going to what they're actively researching or planning. So there's two in here. There's life events. So life events is basically big life events, right? So business creation, college graduation, right? It could be home renovation, right? So they've recently renovated their home or they're renovating soon. It could be marriage, it could be moving, it could be getting a new pet, purchasing a home, retirement, right? So these are useful. And then the in-market is obviously what I was mentioning, which is people who are in a certain kind of buying intent, right? And again, this isn't the most accurate. This is kind of Google's best guess, but you can see there's a huge number of audiences there, right? So for example, one that we may use is advertising and marketing services, because that's usually good for an agency. Email marketing services, right? So if you're an email marketing agency, this works. And there's just so many of them, right? So you can even search for it, and you can search for, business, and then you can basically see in market. There's a bunch of in-market audiences right there. So this is really, really useful. So one way to get really great ideas for your in-market audiences is to go to Google Analytics, and I highly recommend you have Google Analytics set up. Go to your audience. So if you go in here, so this is actually your basically your remarketing audiences, but you want to scroll down here and you want to go right here to in-market segments. As you can see here, if you click on, basically if you have goals set up, and let's say one of the goals is book calls. So this will give you some ideas of which audiences to test, because if you find an audience that has, let's say, a ton of different book calls, then that might be an audience you can test inside Google Ads as an in-market audience. So this could be perhaps employment is one that could work, or web design and development is another one that could work, right? Because essentially they're telling you of all the visitors that have been to your website, what are the different audiences that are likely to convert? What are the in-market segments that are likely to convert? And the best part is you can also do this with affinity audiences. So we're going to get to affinity, but you can do the same thing with affinity, right? So it basically shows you of the people who booked your calls, which affinity audience are they in? So then you can go and run those affinity campaigns in Google and YouTube ads. And to be honest, a lot of times these don't make sense, but it's worth testing, because I'll give you an example. We had a product we were selling for basically a make money online offer, and the #1 affinity audience was green living, fans, or what, basically environmental fans, which made no sense at all. But we ran that audience and it worked super well. So sometimes these don't make sense, but it's worth testing. So the next audience type is topics, right? They're broad topics based on video metadata. So you're showing up in front of videos about that niche. And it's a really great targeting choice. There's a lot of scale if you can make it work, right? And you can be aggressive on spending. This is one of the broad audience types that you should test as you start scaling your ad account, right? So with topics, you want to be careful with spend, as they can overspend. Sometimes they can kind of be very aggressive in terms of spend. So I would highly recommend that with topic audiences, you do start them off at lower budgets and then start scaling them more aggressively. And also, this is an audience type that works better with mature scaling accounts, as it's super broad, so it's not as relevant. So when you're starting out with an account, this may not be the best option initially. The way you basically set up topic audiences is, let's say we go into a campaign. If you want to set up a topic audience, what you're going to do is you're going to go to content and then topics. And then over here, you can see there's a ton of topics, right? So for example, there's a bunch of business topics. So there's business operations, there's business services, there's basically anything you can think of to have in topics, right? Even games, right? Health, etc. So topics are quite powerful, but you do have to understand they're very broad. Sometimes you'll get very irrelevant videos showing up, but they are worth testing out. Now let's talk about affinity audiences. So this is based on Google's data on what people like, or what kind of behavior they have. This is extremely broad, right? So with topic audiences, right, the way topics work is it's basically when people are watching a certain type of video, you show up in front of them, right? So if somebody's watching a video on, let's say, a marketing topic, right? Let's say it's a marketing video, then that would be part of a small business or marketing topic, right? With affinity audience, it's based more on what the consumer's interest is, right? So if somebody is very interested in green living, you could show them an ad in front of a video about, surfing. So it's not really about what content they're watching at this current time. It's more about what kind of consumer they are. And so with topics, you'll show up in front of videos that are somewhat relevant and related to that topic, while with affinity audiences, you're going to show up in front of people who are interested in that issue or that interest, but it could be in front of a video that's about something completely different. So one is more contextual. So topics is more contextual because it's what they're doing at that current time, while the second, affinity audiences, it's more behavioral. So it's based on the consumer's behavior. So it's more based on the consumer instead of the video they're watching at that exact moment. So with these affinity audiences as well as topics, you do want to keep an eye on placements. Make sure your ads are not showing up in front of children's videos. Make sure the quality is relevant. You might have to exclude some videos, but these can be a great scaling audience. Again, topics and affinity audiences are more for scaling. For starting out, they can be a little bit irrelevant in terms of just being way too broad. So once the algorithm knows what kind of lead or customer you want, these are great, but when you're just starting out, it can lead to overspending. So what's the recommended testing order, right? What's the best way to test all these audiences? What order should you test them in? So first thing I want to say is never just be running one type of audience. Always be testing 3 to 5 different types of audiences and not just one type. So you always want to be diversifying and trying different audiences, because you don't know what's going to work in each Google Ads account, right? It could be completely different. So the first one is retargeting website visitors, email lists, and YouTube engagers, right? You want to start with the easy, low-hanging fruit, which is your warm audiences. It's a no-brainer. Those are the ones you'll get some good results in because they're already interested, right? After that, what I like to do is test out custom intent audiences, keyword audiences, and custom affinity audiences. I think those are really, really great audience types that have worked really great for us in 2020, 2021, and 2022, right? So after that, in-market audiences and placement campaigns. So placements and in-market come in a bit lower. I personally prefer in-market over placements because it's broader, it spends more, while placements often don't spend at all. But those are worth testing. Placements can be very expensive, but very qualified, right? So if you have a great funnel with placements, you can really snipe people. However, the downside is it can be expensive. Now, after in-market and placements, you have topics, affinity, and similar audiences. So those are kind of lower priority. As you can see, similar audiences is way down in my priority list. So once you do start scaling, you can go with open targeting and target everybody and just do demographic targeting. So it could be something like hey, just people who are males between the age of 24 and 50, or men and women who are parents between the age of 20 and 50, right? Like, you can go with broad open targeting after you start spending some money, right? If you're spending even $1,000 a day, that's where open and broad targeting audiences can start working really, really well. So yeah, guys, that's it for this video. Hopefully you learned a lot. And now you know what these different audiences are, what the pros and cons are, and which ones to use in which situations. Guys, that was a preview of my YouTube ads course. That's just one video out of, I think, something like 20+ hours of in-depth content, a Facebook group where you can ask me anything you want, weekly live coaching calls, and much more. And get this, we're increasing the price when the full 2022 YouTube advertising course is coming out. Price will go up by something like $2,000. So if you guys are interested in joining, make sure to click the link below. Our students have generated something like $15 million with YouTube ads after joining our program. We just had our first student and client who made over $10 million after joining our program. And he's obviously very happy about the investment he's made. So if you're interested, go click the link below. You can check out all the reviews. You can check out what's included in the program, and I'll see you there.